reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Since many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as those who were eyewitnesses from the beginning and ministers of the word have handed them down to us, I too have decided, after investigating everything accurately anew, to write it down in an orderly sequence for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may realize the certainty of the teachings you have received. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news of him spread throughout the whole region. He taught in their synagogues and was praised by all. He came to Nazareth, where he had grown up, and went, according to his custom, into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. He stood up to read, and was handed a scroll of the prophet Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the passage. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord. Rolling up the scroll, he handed it back to the attendant, and he sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue looked intently at him. He said to them, "Today, this scripture passage is fulfilled in your hearing." Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
I must apologize to you. You're getting me 2 weeks in a row. Deacon Dan is away in North Carolina, so I'm here. I'm sorry. Last week we read from the Gospel of John. We read about the transformation that takes place in our lives. As water to wine, we are being transformed as Christians. It's connected to this gospel today. This gospel refers to a passage in Isaiah. Actually, it's a very beautiful passage. I would encourage everyone to read the whole one. It's in Isaiah 61. It's about freedom, freedom for the captives. Very specifically, Isaiah is speaking about a time when there is freedom now for the Israelites. For 50 years, they were held captive in Babylonia. And now they are free to go home, to worship as they need to. This freedom. About setting the captives free. How does it speak to us today? What are we hearing? Jesus said it's fulfilled in our hearing. The captives are all those people that we hold bound. We bind people with unforgiveness. We bind people with judgment. We bind people by looking down at them. There's an ancient Jewish story about Abraham. God had told the archangel Michael to lift Abraham up to see the world from a different vantage point, being aware that we do not see as God sees. Our eyes are seeing different situations are not the same. So Abraham is lifted up. And as he is traveling around with Michael, he first notices two people who are in the act of adultery. And he turns to Michael and he says, "I want you to smite them with fire." And Michael does this. St. Michael was given the instructions by God to do whatever Abraham asked him to do. They continue on. He sees a group of people ready to rob a house. And he tells Michael, I want you to send wild beasts to ravage these people. So Michael complies and does that. They travel a little bit farther and they see someone who is murdering another person. Michael says, I want you to open a chasm. Abraham says to Michael, I want you to open a chasm where that murderer will fall into. At that time, after that happened, God speaks to Michael and says, I want you to turn Abraham to see only his family. Abraham does not have my heart. I am full of compassion and forgiveness, God tells Michael, but Abraham does not have that. I am merciful. There is no mercy in Abraham's heart right now. So he turns him towards his family, and eventually Michael takes him up to the gates of heaven. And Michael shows him the two gates of heaven. There is a narrow gate, and there's a wide gate. And Michael tells him, do everything you can to go through the narrow gate. Many people will try to get through the wide gate, and many will fail. Abraham also noticed that there were several people in between those two gates. And he asked, what is this all about? Well, and Michael explained, these are the people whose deeds, both good and bad, balance each other out. There's not enough for them to get into the narrow gate. Abraham then looked at himself. He realized he could not fit through the narrow gate. And at that moment, he realized his sin. He had started to judge others. And he begged for forgiveness. The next thing he did was ask Michael, what if I pray for these people who are this in-between stage to help them through? So he got on his knees and began to pray for those people who were in between. And they began to be able to go in the narrow gate. But Abraham didn't stop there. He said, what if I pray for all those people I had you smite? And he began to pray for them. And he realized the truth is that he had no place to judge. That he was holding people captives by his sin of judgment, which now he was free of. We too are called to be free of the sin of judgment. We have no right to judge others. In fact, Jesus spoke about, in this hearing, the freedom of captives. This hearing, this scripture becomes alive. It is existing right here and now. In our hearing, we are called to free all those people we have held in bondage. That is the water becoming the wine, something useful. We, as Christians, are called part of this transformation. We must let go of those people we are bound. Now, it's very easy to bind people. It's very easy for me to bind someone who is a politician, especially the ones I don't like. But in reality, it is also wrong of me to do that. It's sinful. We are called to a higher purpose, to set the captives free in this world and to proclaim the good news to everybody. We are a people of hope. We are not a people of fear. To bring hope to someone means we must set them free, but we ourselves must set others free that we hold captive. Christ has freed every one of us. Now we must start freeing others.